How's it going, everyone? Mike the War Host here, and with 2019 coming to a close, I thought I'd spend a few minutes talking about what I'm hoping to see from Warcradle Studios in 2020 and beyond. Overall, it's been a pretty good year for Warcradle, with the announcement of Lost World Exodus back in July, the 1.09 update fixing a lot of issues from the previous edition, and plenty of shiny new models to pick up. Here's hoping 2020 continues that upward trend. First off, let's talk Posses. It's no secret that there are plenty of Posses that players have been waiting to see for quite some time now that, with any luck, will finally be released this year. We saw the 3D renders for the Outlaw Dead or Alive posse earlier on, and Wild West Exoudus fans have been patiently, and sometimes not so patiently, waiting for its release ever since. There are also a few posses like the King in Yellow for the Hex, the Tombstone Posse, and the Union's Irresistible Force that all have had posse cards since the early days of 2nd edition and are practically impossible to play due to a lack of available models. Here's hoping we finally get these long-awaited posses released next year. Next up are some specific models and units that would be a welcome sight in 2020. First up is more Dark Nation models. This posse is currently in an odd place with only a single posse box, a single hand box, and maybe 4 individual models available depending on the stock levels of eBay sellers and the Warcradle Classics line. There's a hell of a lot of potential with the Dark Nation, and I really hope that in 2020 we get them fleshed out a bit more. Another faction that could definitely use some more love are the Watchers. Currently they're in a very odd position due to a lack of available units. As I mentioned in my faction overview video, the Watchers are hurting for additional models to use in their posses. They currently only have 2 posse boxes and 3 bosses, one of which can only be used in a generic Watchers posse. I would love to see a Magenta Clade posse released this year, as a melee-oriented option for the Watchers would definitely fill a big hole in the faction's toolbox. And while we're talking about shoring up factions' weak points, let's talk vehicles. Both big and small, they are often a core component of most players' lists, and yet can be ridiculously difficult to get your hands on. The Iron Horse is probably the best example of this. They are nearly as ubiquitous as the K9 units, and a few current posses can be built with nothing but mounted units, but the Iron Horse model isn't the easiest to convert to use with another faction. The alternate heads are quickly disappearing. At the time of this recording, I was only able to find Union and Enlightened heads, but the mini itself isn't quite up to snuff design-wise. The arms on the Iron Horse Rider are really difficult to attach and place correctly due to the contact points being completely smooth, so it's very easy to end up with a rider that looks like he's ducking down or in some other really odd position. The Iron Horse model has the potential to be a staple of the game, like the K9 models, and a big money maker for Warcradle, but players are currently stuck hunting on eBay or third-party sites to get a model that will also take a lot of time to convert to use with other factions. For something like doing a mounted version of Custer's Forlorn Hope, this is just not really that viable. The Interceptor also fits into this category, but to a lesser degree since it's not used as much in other factions as the Iron Horse. And let's not forget about the big boys either. Models like the Flame Truck, Pillar of Light, and Ironhide are either totally unavailable or cost an absolutely ridiculous amount. The cheapest large vehicle I found currently available is the Rolling Thunder at a whopping $64. The other vehicles are in the $80+ range, and the Ironhide is currently gone from the Warcradle Classics line. You might have some better luck on eBay or third-party sites, but don't hold your breath. I know it's a bit of a Hail Mary, but I seriously hope these become more available at a lower price than what we currently have to choose from. And to round this section out a bit, let's talk about terrain. The Red Oak set is beautiful and goes together really well in my experience, for the most part. Yes, I'm looking at you, Red Oak fences, but the Nzambu line currently only has 2 options. I'm hoping that we'll see more of these next year, possibly with the release of a Port of the Nzambu posse, since those two seem like they would dovetail really well together. I'd also like to see a set of industrial/factory/tech terrain as well, either for a Promethean complex or something available for Lost World Exodus, assuming Lost World Exodus will use the same type of terrain. We don't know yet because we don't have a whole lot of information out about the game right now. And to go ahead and round out the end of this video, let's finish up with some more generic and miscellaneous hopes and wishes. First things first is Give us Dystopian Wars and Lost World Exodus already! Alright, I'm calm now. These two games were set to be released in 2019, but some snags were hit along the way, and now we're stuck hoping for a 2020 release. If I had to guess, and admittedly my track record hasn't been that great on guessing so far, I figured we'll get the Dystopian Wars release around Adepticon, with Lost World Exodus coming later in the year at Gen Con. Warcradle fans have been patient with the studio so far, but I worry that any additional delays will result in a poor reception when it finally does get released, which nobody wants. Well, maybe the people on the Dystopian Wars subreddit, but that's a topic for another day. Another thing I'd like to see is some more adventures and supplements released for Wild West Exoudus. The adventure card system is a good way to keep the same 5 missions from feeling stale, and the peril system from the Badlands Adventure supplement works very well too, but they can really only do so much. In order to keep things fresh, I'd really like to see some more adventures become available, either from Warcradle or from the community. I've personally designed 2 adventures, which I'll see if I can provide links for down below if I can find an easy way to host the PDFs. Another option, if possible, is I'd like to see a version of the open war deck that Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k use for randomly generating missions and adventures. That would definitely be a way to help keep things from feeling like you're just going through the motions over and over again. And finally, probably the most important thing, the thing that I would really like to see more than anything else I've listed here, like even more than Iron Horses, is more lore, more background information. One of the big things that really drew me into Wild West Exoudus back in 1st edition was the amount of work that went into building the world like right out the gate. A huge chunk of the 1st edition rulebook was just background, and the game also had several novels released shortly afterwards to help flesh things out. And in today's market, that's almost a requirement, as everyone is competing with the 30 plus years of lore and background that Warhammer 40k has to draw from. It's not fair, but that's just the reality of the market. Even newer games like War Machine and Infinity have a good amount of backstory to draw from, and this is one area that I find Wild West Exoudus really lacking in. The info that we have in the rulebook is great, and the short stories and vignettes that Sarah Cockwell has released are also great, but I just want more. And I think a lot of other players really feel the same way. Well, that's going to do it for me today. While I seriously doubt I'll get every little thing in this wish list, I really hope that we at least get some of it in 2020. Stay tuned for more Posse Tactics videos, painting tutorials. There's actually a painting competition currently being organized on the Dark Council Facebook group, set to start late this month or early next month. And if logistics and time allows, more battle reports. Take care, everyone.